There was a question about the subsidy savings. Where has it gone to? I've heard this question so many times. And guess what? It's a valid question. The combined impact of the subsidy on fuel, as well as, I like to call it subsidy on FX, right, was about 5% of GDP. So you remove both, you save money. But saving money wasn't the primary objective. It was eliminating the distortion and the corruption in the system, which is more fundamental. But the money saving is also important. So where has the money gone to? And in a few days, you will see the detailed analysis, because we believe that we owe a duty to explain what we do to the Nigerian people. That's what transparency looks like. But in the meantime, I can give you some of the highlights. Many Nigerians will simply compare the past with the present and conclude that the reform is not working for them. Some would even say it's a bad reform. What we don't normally compare, or the question we usually don't ask, is what would have been if the reforms were not carried out? Counterfactual. Now, before the reforms, we were printing money to spend. Interest rates was about 8%. Minimum wage was 30,000 naira. If you just think about those three, those are big numbers. If you stop printing, the spending doesn't disappear. You need to finance the money you were printing before. That was part of where the savings went. Because the reforms induced higher prices, interest rates went up. So instead of paying 8% on our debt, we're paying as high as 24%. When you need to service debt, you don't debate it whether you need to pay. You can't negotiate it. You pay, and you pay on time. Minimum wage went up from 30,000 naira to 70,000 naira. That's almost double the wage bill of the government. In addition to other important spending, like the NEL fund, where over 1.5 million students received not only their tuition, but stipend on a monthly basis. And if you think that's not important enough, what it actually means is that about over 1 million households, the parents no longer have to save, borrow, and be stressed just to pay the tuition. Now they can deploy that resources into their small businesses and to take care of other important basic needs. So this is significant. So what we need to do is we'll provide a detailed explanation of how much we saved and how the money has been spent. The other question people tend to ask along with this is, why do you keep borrowing after you said you've exceeded revenue? And I tried to explain this recently, that if you have a budget to spend 10 and you have a target of revenue of 6, you need to borrow 4. If you collect revenue of 7, you have exceeded your revenue target because it was 6 you were hoping to collect. But it doesn't change the fact that you still need to borrow 3. So this is how exceeding revenue target can coexist with borrowing. And as a matter of fact, there's nothing wrong with borrowing, provided you apply it productively. For every 1 naira and every $1 that we borrow, we must add more value than the cost of the borrowing. Then the other question you raise, equally important, is that poverty has gone up and unemployment rate is high. You know, this is one area where I tend to disagree with the narrative by the World Bank. World Bank would say that poverty has gone up despite the reforms. And I say, yeah, poverty has gone up because you cannot remove subsidy and people become richer, right? The reform itself was a reset. We were living in fiscal illusions. So we needed to stop deceiving ourselves so the country can move forward. And that reset meant that income levels in real terms will fall, and that would increase poverty. But the good news is that the numbers for 2025 in dollar terms, real per capita income growth was nearly 10%. That makes Nigeria one of the fastest countries in lifting people out of poverty. We intend to sustain that.